Okay, this is just an overview that we're looking at. In a few weeks' time, when the trials are on and you're all outside the hall, you really want to keep calm. You've got to have some sort of plan of what you're going to be doing for that 3 hours. We know 3 hours, so how many minutes is that? 180 minutes. 10 questions, so bit of division, how many minutes per question? 18 minutes. And you might not spend 18 or might not need 18 on the first question, and maybe not the last, but you know, maybe 18 is pretty good as an estimate for what you should be spending. So it tells you that there's 5 minutes reading time. What you will do in that 5 minutes is just flick through it and go, oh yes, that's okay, I can do that. Don't panic, that's the #1 rule. This is going to be writing in black now, so you want to write in black pen, but probably the most important thing is the bit here that says show all necessary working out. Okay, and that's vital, and what you have to look at is how much the question's worth, because if it's worth 4 marks, then you need to give us 4 things, not just a final answer. When they say pick your pens up and start, I had a test yesterday with Year 12, and they just picked it up and they were like the horses at the Melbourne Cup, just stampeding out of the barriers. And as a result, they all really stuffed up question 1. Question 1 is your easiest question. You want to get 12 out of 12 for it, but sometimes you can be in such a frenzy to get there that you're going to make really careless and silly mistakes. So, for example, with this one here, factorise, a lot of people would, because their adrenaline is so surging, they keep going and think that there is an equal to 0 here, and then what do you think they've done? They haven't stopped at the factorise. What have they gone ahead and done? They've solved it. And so the marker is thinking, well, this student doesn't know the difference between factorising or solving. It's a really natural mistake to make, because you're finally sitting there, pent up, you've had all these practices, all these assessment tasks, finally the HSC's there, but you're just too gung-ho. #1, don't think you have to dive into the paper. You've got 3 hours, okay? If you spend 10 minutes on this, you've still got 170 minutes left. Okay, so here we get to the calculus question, question 2. No applications, just straight out doing it. Here, see if you can look at the next page, or the next question where we've got the coordinate geometry, and you just want to sort of look at it and go, well, I wonder what I can underline, or I wonder if there's anything here. So here, again, you're going to go through this pretty quickly, but maybe writing that down is good. And then, what's that? The area of a trapezium. So it's really just to sort of put pen on paper and to say, okay, that's the rule, I'll come back and do it later. Why have I put an arrow down here to the word hence? That word hence is so important. It means whatever you just did, you are going to use in that second part. It's our favourite word in a maths test. And I'd say with any diagram, rather than using pen, maybe use a good pencil so you can rub it out. That's your integral sheet. You really need to be familiar with that. In fact, I'd suggest you rip it off and put it in front of you, and we'll add a few things to it, because some students don't even know that's there as a guide. Many students have come out of the exam and said, I forgot to do the last question. They think that that is a question, and we know that that isn't a question. That's the only thing we give you to help you with, but it's a pity that most people don't know that we're actually giving it to you. And what are the sort of things you'd suggest we would like to see on the diagram? Labelling axes. Scale, where I'm looking at something like, I want to have the X on actually a line. What did we mean by uniform scale?
Evenly spaced.
Yeah, I want to see, they don't have to be the same vertically and horizontally, but we do want to see none of this sort of, oh, I really need to go. Say you had a point up here that was 37, and you started going 1, 2, 3. Oh, damn it, I'm going to make it 37 anyway. Be careful with your notation. If you want to do the square root of x, that's what you'll do. How do you do the cube root of x? Where does it goes there? We really don't want to see something like this happening, which is a bit like where that 4 was for the 4th root. We also don't want to see this is log to the base e. It's not very nice to see this. Okay, now the thing here is when you've got your booklets, when you're doing assessments, what do you think's a bit ratty about this one? I'm a bit confused. Do I sort of follow this down and then do I go up here and then where does it go? Do you know what I mean? You're not going to have columns, you're just going to go down, turn the page, next page and down. We don't mind it being crossed out. We prefer it to be crossed out because in the HSC, say this one here, all this working was correct and it was out of 3. And say the student left this in, it was wrong. Now, human nature, I will look at that, I will think to myself, good grief, poor person, they, you know, in an exam situation, knew the work, and what we would do, we would pay that 3, but deduct 1, okay? So, generally that's what would happen. If there's no conflict and it's a matter of, I can see that or that, this is crossed out, but it's correct, then the person would get 2. It's only fair too, because for this student, we can see what she's done, or he's done, and that person should get the marks, but not as many as the person who wasn't confused. So that's why there's that elimination. You'll see sometimes the question's only worth 1. So if you had 2 choices and then we deducted the 1 mark, you'd still get nothing. So you've got to take your time and be careful there. This was just naming angles, and when you're labelling angles and we get to geometry later, be very, very careful that if you are talking about angle PQR, say, so you've got angle PQR, but you get it mixed up and call it PQ, then we're not going to know that, oh, you really meant that. You know, if you label the angle incorrectly, you won't get the mark.